Okay, friends, frogs, French fries. Hello, everybody. Let me just do this last thing here. Had a momentary panic where something went wrong with the software, but we seem to have solved it with only a loss of about a minute or so. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you may happen to be. I'm Tad, still, always. I wake up this way every day. That's my burden to bear. And just wanted to let you know, whoops, that I will be zipping through things fairly fast tonight. At least that's my plan. At least I'm talking about the preliminary stuff. Just to let you know, I'm not going to spend a long amount of time chatting for a number of reasons, but primarily because I want to try to finish Brothers of the Wind tonight. So, that being the case, I am going to start fairly soon. Excuse me, let me just see who's checked in so far. And if, oh God, I hate this setup. Who have we got so far? Barban, Tracy McClatchy, Emily, hello Emily, Jeremy, hello Jeremy, Claudia, a pleasure as always, Ron, my friend, good to see you too, Kelly, hello Kelly, Penny, and John Simpson. Hello, everybody. Very nice to see you all. As I explained, I am not going to be talking for a long time tonight because the plan is to finish the book. So, is there anything I need to say quickly just to explain what's going on at the moment? We're going out of town starting a week from today. And I will be gone for at least 2 weeks, and that will take me squarely through 3 weekends. Not to mention the fact that I don't really know what I'm going to do yet. So I'm definitely going to be off for a few weeks. So you are all free to do whatever you want to do with the time that you would have otherwise wasted with me. What else? There's not really a lot else. I already said, kind of announced over the last couple of weeks that we were going to be in England, seeing family and friends there. And I will be spending some time at the British Fantasy Convention in Birmingham. And so I doubt many of the people listening right now are able to get there. But if you do happen to be able to, or you know somebody else who would like to come and say hello, I will be, and Deb will be, we will both be at the British Fantasy Convention I think it runs from the 14th to the 17th of September in Birmingham. And if you want more information, you can always go look on the British Fantasy Society's homepage, webpage, whatever. Let me think. Anything else, or shall I just jump in and start reading? That's pretty much mostly everything. We're still in this kind of weird limbo land where, we now know that we're not staying here in the house we're living in at the moment. But instead we'll be moving back probably at the end of the year to our other house, not our other house, in the sense that this is not our house, this is the family's house, but to our house on the Santa Cruz side of the hills. And beyond that, it just basically means that everything is kind of in stasis. Nothing can really change hugely because of that. So since change that light slightly. So since that's the case, I'm just working on what I can work on, and of course at the moment getting ready to go out of town, dealing with an emotionally distraught dog, because Big Dog has seen the suitcases and has figured out that probably somebody is going somewhere, and he hates that. He is never happy when any of his people are gone, but especially not when Deb and I are gone. So, spending a lot of time with a large dog sort of pressed on top of me or squooged up against me, I guess hoping that he can prevent me from going anywhere by mere contact, or else perhaps just wanting to know whenever I leave. And indeed he does kind of at the moment. He's following me from room to room. You know how that is if you are a dog owner and especially if you have a nervous dog. Anyway, so what I'm going to do now, just make one quick check and see if there's any other people have cruised in that I should say hello to. Ivan! Hello, Ivan. Hello, Ray. There's Ray. Becca. And I think those are the only new ones that I have on here. Susan Shamblin and Carl Dersham. Hello, hello. Good to see you, all of you. Thank you for joining me. And oh, good. Okay, Ivan, thank you. I just saw your post. Excellent. Lovely, lovely, lovely. Anyway, so that's where I'm at. I am going to start reading. I realize I normally faff around for another 6 or 7 minutes at the beginning of the broadcast each time, but I'm not going to this time because, as I said, we have a lot to do. Give you a quick reprise of what's going on. Hakatri, the elf lord, the Scythi lord, I guess you call him, and his servant and stroke squire, our narrator Pamonkes, have just come away from Enki-Shausiye, where they had to go at the last moment after the Stone of Farewell because Hakatri was almost dead. And now he has come back with Pamon to Azua, which someday will become the Hayhold, as I'm sure everybody knows by now. And he is trying to recover, but he's not really getting much better. And we're just now reading a bit where his dreams are actually beginning to kind of press themselves into Pamonkes's dreams at this point. And of course, Hakatri's dreams, after having been splashed with dragon's blood, are nothing pleasant. So that's what we're reading about right now. And they are in Azua, and we're talking about Pamonkes's perceptions of what's going on with his master. Strangest and most frightening of all, though, were the dreams I had about Azua itself. Whether they sprang from my master's imaginings or my own growing fears, I could not tell, but they were truly terrible. I dreamed of our ancient home in flames, of dark, distorted shapes running through the halls, and of blood dripping down marble stairs. I heard frightful screams and cries for help, all in the Zedaya tongue. Over it all I saw again and again a shadow wearing the ancient birch bark crown of Azua's protectors, with branches that spread from it like the antlers of a stag. I dreamed that a ghastly horned shadow sat in the protector's chair, but the Saansara's chair beside it was empty, and the sky beyond the high windows was tinged with the red light of fire. Jingisu, a voice said, echoing those Azua dreams. Let me start that one again. Jingisu, a voice said, echoing through those Azua dreams. A voice that hissed like the blackworm, but that I could almost recognize. Sorrow. Were the dreams only Hakatri's, or were they mine as well? Sometimes I saw my master in these visions, bent in pain at the railing of a ship, or staring out at endless ocean swells. And at those moments I thought the visions must be my own, for my master and I had traveled by water many times during my life. But at other moments, as I watched dim armored shapes struggling against beasts stranger than any dragon, I felt sure I gazed on something I had never seen, something from the long-lost days of the garden itself. It became a fearful exercise merely to lay myself down on my bed in those days, though I was always weary. Sometimes I drank wine until I fell into sleep sitting upright, but even that did not protect me from most of the invading visions, and it never saved me from the dreams of burning. Many nights I slept in my master's chamber because I did not want to leave his side, though there was little I could do for him except to let him know that he was not alone. It was on such a night in the wolf moon, only days before the first celebration of the new great year, called the Feast of Exodus, that I awakened to hear my master thrashing and groaning in his bed. In his agony he had thrown off his bedclothes so that they had fallen over me, where I lay on my pallet on the floor, and as I first awakened, I struggled against them, blind and fearful, until I realized what had happened and stopped fighting. Hakatri's breath was short and harsh. Ha, 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 and that frightened me. Then, just as I was about to go to him, he calmed again and fell into a gentler rhythm. As I paused, half upright, I became aware of a shadow in the doorway of the chamber. I peered out of the coils of the blanket and saw that it was not a single silhouette, but two, one tall, one less so, and that they were both looking at Hakatri in his bed. Assassins, I thought, but as quick as the terror came, I thought again, no, never in Azua. I stayed silent, a heartbeat from shouting for the rest of my master's household, but the twin shapes did not move past the threshold. It tears at my heart, said the taller one, and though he spoke quietly, I recognized Inaluki's voice. My fear ebbed, but was replaced by a troubled curiosity. What did he want in his brother's chamber, and who was with him? He lives, but he suffers every day, Inaluki said. There are moments when I think it would have been better if he had perished in Serpent's Vale. I did not hear what, if anything, his companion said. Then Inaluki spoke again. Of course I do. No punishment could be enough to pay for his suffering, for what they did to him. I would happily see every one of those cowardly vermin driven from our lands. As I peered from the shadows, I saw the shorter figure lean close to Inaluki, but all I heard was an almost silent murmur, like dry leaves blowing across the ground. The figure was hooded, but I thought I could guess the name of Inaluki's companion, and my heart sank a little. No! Inaluki still did not raise his voice, but his reply was full of shock and disgust. Never! He is dearer to me than anything. But I see no way to go forward with him this way. How can he be protector when the time comes? Again I heard the dry rattle of a whisper. You run ahead of all sense, Omu, Inaluki said. That day will never come. I have told you so before, and told your mistress as well. He is my brother. He is my blood. The hooded figure muttered a few more words, but this time Inaluki did not answer. A moment later they turned, and their shadows slid from the doorway, leaving me shivering on the floor. When I rose to make certain they had gone, I saw that, though my master's face was hidden in the shadow cast by the open door, his eyes were open, as though he had been awake the whole time. Then he shut them again. The next day, Hakatri sent for me to meet him in Azua's garden gallery, which girdled the bottom of the Yazira's great dome above Thousand Leaves Hall. The gallery was a score of paces in width, and planted with trees and other greenery, a circular mid-air forest fitted out with benches and paths. As soon as I arrived, I saw my master, but did not immediately approach him because he was with his wife, Lady Briseu. I waited a discreet distance away, but after no little time had passed, it became clear to me that the conversation would be a long one, so I found a bench among the greenery of the dense garden. A light rain was falling through the open spaces of the domed roof. Fern leaves bounced as the drops fell on them. I looked down at the people of the court in the levels below me, tiny figures as oblivious to my existence as they might be to a pigeon gazing at them from a high branch. The air was chill, now that the season of withering was upon us, and I pulled my tunic closer around me. I feel the cold more deeply than do my master's folk. Hakatri and his wife were deep in conversation. I had, of course, picked a spot where I could not accidentally overhear them, but I soon realized my error. They were not speaking aloud, but in the gestures that are so much a part of Zidaya discourse. I wondered at this, until I saw their daughter, Likimea, tumble out of the bushes beside them, pause only long enough to sneak a glance at my master, then speed away again before Briseu could capture her. Now I understood why they were talking without speech, and I wondered what they might be discussing that they wanted to keep from their child. In the moments before I turned away, I could see that there was contention between them. Hakatri's hand gestures were weary, as though they had been at it for some time. Briseyu seemed pained, abrupt as startled birds taking flight. Little Likimea soon returned to the bench. She kept her mother between her father and herself, and when she did look at Hakatri, it was only quickly, like a grazing deer keeping an eye on a distant wolf. I could not understand this. My master had been badly scarred by the dragon's blood, but there were other Zidaya almost as cruelly marked by hunting mishaps and other sorts of bad luck. But Hakatri's daughter seemed to treat her father like an unknown quantity, like an envoy sent by a potential enemy. My master and his wife paused, even their silent gestures, while Likimea was beside them, but the child soon leaped to her feet and vanished back into the garden tangle. I should have looked away. Spying on Hakatri and Briseyu with my eyes was just as ignoble as eavesdropping, but it seemed clear that some large matter was between them, and I was fearful of what that might be and what it might mean for me. To look on Lady Briseyu of the silver braids is to be half in love with her, even for one of a different kind, like myself. She is tall for her folk, tall as any male, and even her most gentle, graceful movements carry a suggestion of strength. She is of the Star's Path House, age-old allies of my master's year-dancing house, known for their loyalty to the Sansare and Azua. My master married her for love, I was told, but I feel sure that his mother and father approved of his choice. Now, though, I watched Briseyu, usually as poised and perfect as a statue, struggling with her composure. She made a series of signs: lost fledgling, stars misread, tumbled walls, and her face was imploring. My master only clasped his hands in the gesture that meant necessity, then separated his hands and spread them in another movement that signified a stronger version of the same: cannot be changed. Briseyu stared at those hands as if she had never seen them before, then drew 2 fingers across her eyes, the sign for Jingizu, sorrow. I could see such misery on her face that my heart plunged inside me like a stone dropped into a well. From her expression I would not have been surprised, although I would also have been astounded at the same time, if Briseyu had begun to weep like a mortal woman. A moment later my master made the same sign she had, passing his hand before his own gaze: sorrow. I turned away, unhappy, and ashamed to have seen their naked pain. A mist of rain drifted down from the open roof of the Yazira, dampening my face and hands. Something appeared at my feet then, startling me. It was young Likimea, who had crawled out of the greenery beside my bench. She rose and came to me in a meandering way that suggested she planned to speak to me, but would choose her own time. Like most Zidaya children, her white hair had not yet been colored with the flower dyes and mineral essences her elders favored. She was still very young, but it was clear she took her looks from her much-admired mother, though little Likimea had a restlessness I had never seen in either parent. Her eyes continued roaming the forested gallery even as she spoke to me. "Greetings, Armiger Pamon," she said with a very good imitation of queenly condescension. "It's year dancing soon." "That is true," I said. Little Likimea and I did not talk very often, but when we did, our conversations often began like this, with her explaining things to me as though I were witless. To be fair, she spoke that way to most of her elders. "Grandmother said I can carry the lamp in the procession of light. That's very important." "You must be proud." She frowned. "Why aren't you in the stables?" she asked. "You're supposed to be taking care of the horses." "Because Lord Hakatri asked me to meet him here." "Ah, She nodded, chewing on her lower lip as she considered. Swan tried to throw me off yesterday. I was riding in the woods by myself. She is very wicked. Swan was Likimea's own horse, a surpassingly gentle creature who would not have thrown a rider even wearing a suit made from burrs. Who would not have thrown even a rider wearing a suit made from burrs. You must have been frightened, I said. Never! She was so outraged by this that she made the sign the courtiers used for untrustworthy gossip, which made me laugh, and for an instant I could almost forget the unhappiness on the faces of my master and his wife sitting just a short distance away. A moment later the child's indignation was forgotten. She gave me a long, curious look. Why aren't you with my father, Armjer? She only called me by my title instead of my clan name when she was annoyed by something. Because your parents are talking, and I don't want to interrupt. Her face showed childish disgust, as well as something else I could not quite fathom, something opaque, hidden. No, I mean my real father. And then she abruptly turned and scurried back into the tangle of greenery once more, leaving me to wonder what strange ideas must be in her mind, and feeling inexpressively sad about the events that had brought us all to this point. I turned back in time to see Lady Briseu rise from my master's side. She called for Likimea, who appeared from behind a curtain of aspens, and together they made their way around the gallery toward the long spiraling staircase that led down to Thousand Leaves Hall. I waited a respectful time, and at last got up and went to my master. I could tell by Hakatri's pallor and the tightness around his eyes that his talk with Briseu had been very difficult. The year dance is coming soon, he said. I nodded. So your daughter informed me. I did my best to amuse. I couldn't possibly have known if she hadn't. My very small jest might as well not have been shared. My master's expression remained drained and distant. After the ceremony, he said slowly, we will be leaving Azua. I was more than surprised. I was stunned as by an unexpected blow to the head. Words caught in my throat, and more than a few moments passed before I could get any of them out. Leaving, my lord? I see no other way. Now we must find a ship, Pamon, and I give that important task to you. A small, sturdy ship, with a crew to sail her. Make certain to choose mariners without families. We may be gone for a long time. My innards clenched, and I felt bile rise in my throat, but the habit of duty was strong. A long time? How long, my lord? As long as it takes to find an answer. And where are we bound, my lord? I do not know, Pamon. Westward, across the great ocean, that is all I can tell you. Stark terror clutched at me. West? Across the ocean? But there is nothing out there, Lord Hakatri. Only empty water. Only storms and unending waves. He shook his head almost violently. The mortals came from there long ago, and there are islands far out from shore that our people have seen as they prowled the coasts. Somewhere beyond the horizon there must be another land, perhaps one even greater than this, the place of our exile. I have seen its shadow in my fevered sleep. But why, my lord? Why go in search of a dream? Remember how the last dream disappointed you when you found it. I was too astonished to take much care with my words. Sit down, Pamon. He gestured to the bench with a trembling hand. Listen now. There is nothing here for me in Azua. Year dancing is an empty masquerade. In my dreams I have seen what was and what will be, or at least what might be. But down every road, on every path that stretches out before me, nothing waits for me but torment. Not really understanding, I could only shake my head in despair. It is true. I feel it, he said. In only one direction does anything else wait, and that is to the west. I do not foresee my salvation there, but I sense that if anything can bring an end to the horror I live with, it lies beyond the sunset. So find a ship for us, Pamon. Make sure she is strong and swift. I must grab at this chance, small as it may be, because if I stay here in the place of my birth, I know to a certainty that darkness and destruction will be the only result. I wept then, but did my best to hide it from him. If Hakatri saw, he did me the courtesy of pretending not to. Oh, master, if you command me, of course I will do it, but my heart is breaking for your family. It is my family that will break if I do not go, he said. It will collapse beneath the weight of my affliction and my failure. Failure? A surge of anger pushed me back onto my feet again. Punish me for insolence if you want, my lord, but I cannot stay silent. Do not use that word, failure, in front of me. You have not failed. You did everything you could. You stood alone and killed the blackworm. The fault belongs to you. Do not say it. Hakatri's eyes turned up to mine, and his face was filled with a sudden misery that matched my own. Do not speak his name. My brother made a mistake, but he need not be cursed for it eternally. He has a chance to redeem his error, but only if I go. I suddenly understood, and the brief moment of anger turned icy cold in my breast. You mean to remove yourself. You mean to let Ineluki become the next protector of Azwa. That is where his salvation lies, if he can seize it. The dreams have shown me. My master's stare had become distant, as though he looked across not just the space between us, but across centuries still unborn. I shuddered, remembering when he had promised his brother that all would be well, and how wrong he had been. But my salvation, he continued, if such a thing exists, lies elsewhere, in the unknown West. All that night, my thoughts clashed like warring armies. I did not want to leave Azua, but I could not desert Hakatri. I had come to desire some kind of life of my own, but that was impossible without betraying my debt to my master. No matter what I did, I would fail someone I cared about. Back and forth the struggle raged, both sides desperate, both sides bone-weary, but neither able to get the upper hand. At last, after struggling for hours alone in the sleepless darkness, I decided that my first obligation was to my master, Hakatri, and always had been. I had to give up even the unlikely hope that one day I might follow a road chosen by myself alone. Honor and duty had been the foundation of my life. I could not give them up now, though it likely condemned me to dying in some unknown land, a mere afterthought in the greater story that was Hakatri's. I tried to console myself that even in exile with my master, I would be part of something more important than I could ever achieve by myself. It was not much comfort, but comfort is not usually part of a servant's life. As the days until year dancing wore down, I pursued all the tasks my master had set for me, though I confess I performed my duties with a heavy heart. No sailor who cared for his home at all wished to go on such a voyage as my master proposed, even though Hakatri was greatly loved. I only succeeded in my mission after invaluable help from Iato, the mariner, the greatest and most venerable of Azua's ship commanders. Though Jujo Iato was now long past his greatest days, he still knew the seafaring world better than any other of his race, and he found a small but worthy craft called Petrel's Wing that would serve my master's needs. She was an ancient but well-kept vessel, long and low and trim, with 2 masts rigged fore and aft. Masts and hull were made of sturdy, hammered witchwood, the rest of its appointments of hand-carved and lovingly polished silverwood, and its bow swept upward in a steep curve like a sea-bird taking flight. With Iato's aid, I was also able to find enough brave or reckless souls from the docks of Azua to fill out the modest crew, but I could nowhere find a captain of sufficient skill. When the ceremony ushering out the old great year was only a short time away, I went to Iato in despair. "What can we do?" I asked him. "No Zidaya will take the helm of Petrel's Wing. And even if we could find a captain among the Hikidaya who could be trusted to protect my lord Hakatri, Nakiga is too far away, as is their harbor at Black Cliffs on the coast." I felt empty inside. Time had run out, and I had failed my master in his only remaining hope. Iato's great age was beginning to show in the boniness of his features and his slowing movements, but his eyes were still bright and his wits sharp. "Then I will do it," he said. "I will be the captain." I thought I had not heard him correctly, but when I asked, he said it again. "Lord Hakatri is the Sansara's firstborn, one of the worthiest of all our people," he explained. "And even if his voyage is folly, what a glorious folly it will be to sail beyond the sunset." I never imagined this aged hero, whose record of deeds was already so lengthy, might decide to undertake such a perilous, ill-omened voyage. A part of me thought that I should try to dissuade him, because if evil did befall the ship, the loss of Iato would be almost as dire for the Zidaya folk as the loss of my master. But at the same moment I was hard-pressed to have a ship ready for Hakatri, and no other captain could be found. When I told my master of what the mariner had said, he was grateful, but troubled. "I desired a crew with no family," he said. "The whole of Azua is Iato's family, and he would be fiercely missed." "Then it is for you to talk him out of it, my lord." He sighed. "Compromise is a very slow poison. I have already sipped from that cup too many times, and I cannot abide staying here any longer." "But why, Lord Hakatri? Why must we go at all?" It seemed to me as though we stood at the edge of some precipice, our only choices either to turn back or to leap into the unknown, but I still could not understand what had brought us there. "You are with your family now, surrounded by the folk who love you. The best healers in the world are here, and if they have not cured you of your suffering, neither has anyone else, mortal or immortal. Why would you leave it all behind for the hardships and dangers of a journey whose end no one can guess?" Hakatri stared at me, then reached out his hand and put his fingers on my arm. It was so rare for me to feel my master's touch, since the dragon's blood burned him, that I held my breath, startled. "I do not know if I can explain, faithful Pamon," he said. "In my waking thoughts these days, everything is shadows and noise. But my dreams are even worse. full of dreadsome visions. I cannot bear the idea of existing like this any longer. If I do nothing, if nothing changes, one day I will end myself. If such a day should come, I do not want to be in the midst of my loved ones and all our folk. If I leave Ozawa now, then I will either find salvation or pass into history quietly as a wayward, wounded spirit instead of an object of horror and pity. I wept. I dared not clutch his hand as he withdrew it. I had learned the lessons of the last year too well for that. But it was all I could do not to sink to my knees and beg him to change his mind. It was not my own fear of the voyage that made my heart go cold in my breast, though I truly did not want to go, did not want to turn my back on what my own small life might have become to follow my master on his terrible journey. It was my master himself I mourned, and all he might have been. But if there was even the smallest chance his future could be saved, how could I set my own happiness at an equal value? That night I prayed to the garden, as my mother had taught me to do when I was still very small. Green sea, full of light, green hills pointing to the sky, white stars and white sands, each a world in itself, each a fleck of the great dream. Hear us, the scatterlings from your sacred shores and shallows. Hear us, the fireflies in the long night. Watch over us, for we are ever faithful, faithful to your memory. O garden that birthed us, O sea that receives us, hear us, for we are your children. Only in that very hour, near the end of a great year and after a lifetime of daily prayers, did I finally stop to wonder why I had been taught to pray in the Zidaya tongue instead of the tongue of my own Tanukadaya folk. Had my mother or father learned and then lost our people's speech, or had they never known it? Did anything but my name belong to me, and to me alone? At the last sunset of the wolf moon, the fiery star known as the year torch appeared in the sky, heralding the new great year. That night, the courtyards, balconies, and rooftops of Azua were crowded as the Sansere and the rest of the Zidaya gathered to greet the arrival of the fiery star. Almost alone among his people, my master did not join the celebration. Hakatri spent the days of the torch by himself, or at least with only me for company. Even Inaluki and his silent Hikidaya shadow joined in the festivities. The people of Azua did not find Omu's presence any less disturbing than before, but they were hungry for the presence of Azua's heirs, so they welcomed Inaluki back into their midst. My master's younger brother drank much and deeply, but it did not seem to make him as moody as at other times. Instead, he showed the people a heedless, merry face. Although some might have wondered at it, they were grateful for the chance to forget tragedy and look toward a new and better day. On the first of the 9 nights of year dancing, Lady Amarasu held the invocation of the garden, and the Witchwood Grove echoed to the sound of singing voices. I could hear them even in my chambers in the servants' hall, where I was alone. When the Zidaya gather for year dancing, their servants and mortal guests are not part of the celebration, but are free to make holiday in their own ways. But I was not in a festive mood. All I could think was that when the 9 nights were finished, I would be leaving Azua behind me. And not just Azua, but all the lands and people I knew. No more letters had reached me from Raven's Perch, and although that saddened me, I had come to feel it was for the best. What if they begged me to come to them? What if pretty, clever Sholey sent some new token of affection, one that could not be courteously overlooked? It would have been a torture to me. I decided to write to them to explain that I was leaving with Hakatri on a voyage into the unknown West, and that, excuse me, start again. I decided to write to them to explain that I was leaving with Hakatri on a voyage into the unknown West, and that they would likely not see me or hear from me again. Nobody was likely to ride out of the city during year dancing, so I knew I would need someone to carry my message to Raven's Perch after I had gone. When I finished writing, I folded it and slipped it into my tunic until I could find a trustworthy courier. The starry crown, the progress of light, the pledge of root and bough, each sunset brought a different part of the year dancing ceremony. Beneath the strange frosty gleam of the year torch, as the world hung each night in its net of stars, the voices of the Zidaya floated up from the witchwood groves hidden in the caverns beneath Azua, as if the earth itself sang, and I mourned the home I was about to lose. Full of restlessness, I hurried back and forth between the palace and the dock where the Petrel's wing was anchored, asking the same things over and over until the sailors begged me to leave them alone. On the last night of those 9 sacred days, my master's people gathered again to sing the hymn to the garden and the songs of renewal, invoking the names of Jacoya the Gatherer and the first Saansara. My master, his preparations completed, finally joined his people that night, and, as I learned later, was welcomed by them with relief and joy, since many had feared he would not be able to attend any of the ceremony. But I could barely stand to hear the singing, which seemed to follow me wherever I went. I walked through the palace until I could scarcely hear the celebration any longer, and the sound of my own footfalls echoed through empty halls. It was in the garden of songbirds, the hour well past middle night, that my master found me. "Paimon, here you are!" Hakatri's voice was strange, loud, and full of cheer that seemed forced. He was limping a little, but otherwise did not show the pain he always carried, and he held a large and ornate cup in his hand. "I have been looking for you all through the palace." "Why have you left the grove, master? Are you unwell?" "I have had worse days," he said, "but I have seen better, too." He laughed. I did not like the sound of it. "And why on your last night among your family and folk have you come looking for me, my lord?" It was an unusually blunt question, but I was deep in mourning for what I was about to lose, and my master seemed more than a little drunk, the first time I had seen him so since before the dragon died. "Tell me, and I will do my best to serve you." "Then drink this, loyal Paimon." He held out the cup. "It is the least I can offer you." I did not particularly want to cloud my thoughts with wine, but another part of me suddenly welcomed the idea of drawing a curtain of drunkenness between the world and myself. I took the cup from him and lifted it, but was made to pause by the strange scent that rose from the drink. Dank moss, cloying spices, and an odd tang like hot metal. It was a combination I had smelled before, in Lord Inazashi's grove on the night we stole the tree. "It smells a little like a witchwood forest," I said. "Ha!" Now my master sounded more feverish than drunken. "Your nose is as wise as your heart is loyal, Paimon. It is my share of the Pt. He gestured vigorously. "Go, drink. It is for you." This shocked and frightened me. Drinking the Kt. The blood of the witchwood was the most sacred part of the year dancing ceremony. The sublime liquor was made from the flowers and fruits of the witchwood, things much rarer in these fallen days than gold or jewels. It lengthened the lives and strengthened the blood of all who drank it. Almost everything about it was kept secret from my kind, but I knew with certainty that Pt.17 was meant only for the Zidaya themselves and was forbidden to Tanukadaya like me. As far as I knew, no one of my kind had ever tasted it, and I did not want to be the first. I cannot take it, my lord. I held out the cup. Here. It is meant for you and your folk, not mine. Why do you not drink it yourself? He did not accept the cup, but turned from me and took a staggering step or two, staring up into the sky at the dying glow of the year torch. I finally realized that my master was not drunk from any wine or liquor. He was drunk with his pain, but he had forced himself out of his bed to attend the final night of year dancing. "Why do I not drink it?" he asked, still staring upward. "If you were me, would you wish to add to your years of suffering? If we somehow find a cure for my torment in the unknown West, there will be more ceremonies, more great years, and I can again take the Kt.17. But if, as I expect, there is nothing out there for me but more disappointment, why prolong a ruined life?" He finally turned back toward me. "But you, Pamon, I could not bear to see you grow old beside me, a sacrifice to my misery. If you drink the blood of the trees and are made strong, you might even return here some day after I am gone, your life still to be lived." I was both touched and horrified. I had reconciled myself, or thought I had, to several score of years spent at my master's side, of leaving all I knew or even hoped, to sail into mystery for the rest of my life in search of a cure for him. But 10 times that? 100 times? A life stretched far beyond what any but a tiny few of my kind had ever known, as long as that of the great navigator himself? And always in service to someone else, even someone as kind and honorable as my master? Hakatri's plan for me was meant as an act of kindness, I knew, an act of love and loyalty, but it seemed more like a curse. I did not drink from the cup, though I will admit that not all my thoughts in that instant were against it. Who could contemplate a span as long as the lords of the Zidaya and be completely indifferent? A small part of me was even excited by fleeting thoughts of the power and honor that would accompany such a far-stretching life, of the riches I could gather, the things I could see and do. But in the end, even those very real temptations were not enough to persuade me. "You do not drink, Pamon," my master said. "I must consider your gift carefully," I told him, because I did not want to refuse him outright. His wild mood seemed to subside. "You are keeping something from me, Pamon," he said. "After all this time in each other's company, that feels strange." It felt strange to me, too, but in all the days since he was struck down by the dragon's blood, I had told him almost nothing of my own thoughts, my own worries and fears, let alone my feeble imaginings of having a life of my own. I had not wanted to trouble him with any of it, and I still did not. As I hesitated, I could hear the last singing voices in the distant grove, bidding the old great year farewell and welcoming in the new one. "It is nothing, master," I said. But Hakatri had lost the feverish excitement that had brought him to me. I saw him wincing in pain once more, which he usually hid when he could. "Tell me what troubles you, loyal servant. Tonight of all nights, our last in Azua, you must not hide anything from me. But I could not tell him, of course. He had suffered so much. I told him another small untruth, not for my own comfort this time, but for his. Nothing troubles me, Lord Hakatri. I am content. For a while after that, we stood in silence. Time for you to take a little sleep, he said at last. Tomorrow will be a hard day for both of us. Will you be well here, master, if I leave? I will. Go to your bed, Armiger Pamon. You have always been more than a servant to me. Tomorrow is not far away, my lord. What time should I come? Petrel's wing is docked beneath Petrel's wing is docked beneath Greenwatch Tower. Meet me there in the last hour of the dark. He reached out a hand and carefully touched my arm. I will never forget your kindness to me during these terrible times. Nor will I forget yours to me, my lord. But it felt as if some nearly invisible fracture had weakened our bond, the strongest attachment of my life. Without it, what was left to me? I felt dizzied. If I did not serve my master, did I even exist? Thus we parted, my master to wander the gardens a little longer, saying his farewells to the home he had known for so many years, but knew he might never see again. I did not do the same. Exhaustion and dismay had fallen on me like a heavy cloak, and I could barely stay upright. When Hakatri was not looking, I set the cup down in the grass, the wine of immortality still untasted, and went off to my bed. This night, my life changes forever, I thought. The stars looked down. I could not imagine they cared one way or the other what might become of me. I must go forward from this homely, familiar place to a future I cannot guess. May the garden wait for me. I made my way down to the water in the hour before dawn, to the slip where Petrel's wing floated on the unseasonably calm waters of Landfall Bay. I did not realize as I climbed the gangplank that the letter I had sat up so late writing to Ona and Sholi, my letter of farewell and apology, was still tucked in my tunic. Overwhelmed by all that was happening, I had forgotten to leave it in the post-rider's guardroom. In truth, so many thoughts were racing through my head in that hour that I scarcely acknowledged the sailors as I made my way to my master's cabin and set down my things. To my surprise, Hakatri was lying in the narrow bunk as if he had slept there. Are you unwell, my lord? He opened his eyes and gave me a wan smile. It was a bad night, Pamon. Your wounds, the burning... He shook his head. Saying farewell to my wife and child. My little daughter would not even let me put my arms around her. No, you'll burn me. That was what Likimea said, though she must have known it wasn't true. He was unhappy enough. I did not tell him what his little daughter had said to me about him not being her real father. I am sorry, my lord. It cannot be helped. He closed his eyes again. I cannot do anything for them. I cannot live with their helpless love. I will find aid somewhere. A cure, perhaps, or at least something to dull this cursed, unending pain and the madness of my dreams. One day I will return and make things right for them, for my family and all the folk I have disappointed. That sounded more like a fading dream than something he truly believed, and my heart ached for him. I ached for myself, too, but that was not something I could afford to think about until we had left Azua far behind. Okay, brief pause here. Just to let you all know, it looks like I got about another 15 minutes or so left of stuff to read, maybe a tiny bit more. So I'm going to just keep reading. So we're going to get it all to the ending tonight. So we may go till 15 minutes after the hour or so, roughly. Then again, I could be totally wrong, since everybody knows how I am with how long things turn out to be. Several streams empty into Landfall Bay, but the water that leaves it flows out in one great river, Tinukoro, the ocean road. As placid as a pond in some places, in others fast-flowing and treacherous, full of hidden rocks and surprising cross-currents, the ocean road is a challenge even to experienced sailors. But with Captain Iato at the helm, we swiftly made our way down to the ocean. I watched from the stern rail as Azua's bright towers and walls vanished into the morning mist. Later, as we approached the river's mouth, I watched the jade expanse of the sea spreading before us, its swells shimmering with the trail of the setting sun, and my mother's long-ago words came back to me. One day you will feel the heartbeat of the dreaming sea. This was not that day, but I did feel something as we left the river behind. A sudden sense that I was on the verge of something important. Ocean children. That was what Tinukadaya meant. Children of the ocean. We did not set our course immediately toward the west. Iato had seen clouds that he did not like along the horizon before darkness fell, so we swung the bow northward and made our way a short distance up the coast before anchoring in a shallow bay for the night. The captain had been right to wait. Before an hour had passed, a storm swept down on the coastline, with high winds and rain so hard it stung the skin, while the skies echoed with distant thunder. Even in the sheltered bay, Petrel's wing rocked and pitched against the hawser as though it were only a child's plaything. I tumbled from side to side on a straw-stuffed pallet in my master's cabin, trying not to think of all that I was leaving behind, and all the things that would never come to be. I had chosen duty, I reminded myself. I had chosen honor, which was eternal, over mere happiness. My master, I am sorry to say, had one of his worst nights, moaning in his sleep, and even shouting sometimes, though I could not understand his words. Whatever dreams plagued him must have been terrible. I had to wrap my cloak around my head to shut out his cries, but still I had little sleep. With the dawn, the skies cleared. The winds were strong, but not dangerous, so the captain ordered the sails unfurled, and we began to make our way west. But even Iato, the mariner, could be fooled. The storm that seemed to have spent its fury returned shortly before sundown. The waves rose swiftly until the ship rolled and bobbed like a piece of corkwood. Iato ordered storm sails, and for a little while we beat on against the winds, the snap and flap of canvas so loud that it hurt my ears. Iato ordered me to leave the deck, so, as the sailors struck the storm sails and tied down everything that might move, I made my way to my master's cabin. When I entered, he opened his eyes. "Do I still sleep?" he asked. His voice was ragged, plaintive. "Pamon, is that you? I can scarcely see you." What he said frightened me more than a little, because my master's eyes had always been so much better than mine. "Let me light the lamp," I said. As the wick caught and I replaced the fish skin hood, I saw that Hakatri had flung his blankets aside, and his face and neck were gleaming with sweat. "You must leave me, Pamon." He said it as flatly as a sentence of death. I had never heard that harsh tone of voice from him before, and for a moment I was speechless. "You must not make this journey." "I have only just come into the cabin, master," I told him. "Let me cover you up again first. I fear you are still ensnared in dreams." "No," he said. "No, Pamon. I have been dreaming, yes, dreaming of my 1,000 reflections of 1,000 different lives. and I have seen something that has frozen my heart." I still thought he was babbling, as he sometimes did when he first awakened. "Dreams! Even the dreams brought by the dragon's blood are still only dreams, my lord. I am here with you now. You may rest." To my surprise, Hakatri forced himself upright on his narrow bunk, clinging to the pallet with straining fingers. His golden eyes were wide in the shadowy cabin, like those of some hunted creature turning at last to fight to the death. "No! By the lost garden itself, no! Listen to me! In all those dream lives I saw you die, Pamon. It was a torture as great as anything the worm's cursed blood has brought me. I lay helpless and saw it, saw your death over and over in more terrible ways than I could count. In every life where you were beside me as we sailed into the west, I saw you die. If you accompany me, your doom is written." The pitching of the petrel's wing was now becoming even stronger, so that Hakatri lost his grip on his pallet and fell back on his bed. The wind howled like a wolf pack beyond the cabin walls. I grabbed the edge of the bunk to keep myself from toppling, but even the ship's fearsome wallowing could not distract me. "No, master, no," I said. "These are only dreams. You know that. And even if they were true, what then? You will live much longer than I will. I knew that when I swore to your service. But I will die serving you, whether it is tonight or 10 years from now, or 100. I reconciled myself to that long ago." He shook his head roughly, like someone beset by stinging insects. "No, I cannot allow it, Pamon. I cannot stand by and see you die when I know I could prevent it. We will return to land tomorrow and put you ashore. But I will not go." I had never before defied him or even contemplated, but I knew I could no longer stay silent. "You do not know all that I have turned my back upon for you, my lord. You cannot be so unfeeling. My lord has to send me away now. Enough! I order you to leave me. Armiger Pamon." He was struggling to sit up again, but the roiling of the ship prevented it. I could scarcely hear him now for the thunder that rattled the skies. "Do you hear me? As your master, I order that you leave this ship." I had fought with myself so fiercely over what to do, and had suffered so much unhappiness to make my decision, that his words provoked a kind of madness in me. "No, and no, Lord Hakatri. I refuse your order. I would do anything else, my lord. I would gladly give my life for you. But in this one thing I must defy you. If you would rid yourself of me, you will have to summon Captain Iato to put me in chains first. I will not leave your side in any other way." "Get out!" Hakatri cried, sounding as pained and miserable as I had ever heard him. "If you will only go in chains, then chains you shall wear. I will not have your death on my conscience, Pamon. I have done enough damage to those around me. My back is nearly breaking under the weight of my mistakes." "I am here to care for you," I began. "Out!" He was shaking with anger now, and fear, too, I could see. "Go and summon Iato. If you will not obey me, he will. You say you have given up much for my sake. If my suffering made me selfish and blind to your pain, then that is a curse I must bear." And indeed I could see a dreadful shame on his damp, tormented face. "But that is all the more reason for you to leave me now. I pray it is not too late to undo some of the hurt I have done, at least to you, Pamon, most faithful of servants. Go, summon the captain, so I can tell him to head to shore. I have no strength left to argue." He fell back on the bed as though he had been pierced by an arrow. Heartbroken and full of rage, I got to my feet, fell as the ship yawed, got up again and stumbled a few steps before crashing against the cabin door, then managed at last to get it open and stumble out into the narrow passage. I was overwhelmed to think that my master could feel so deeply about my unimportant life, but I was also furious that he should so badly fail to understand my loyalty, as well as all that I had sacrificed for him. The growing tempest seemed to echo the near madness that filled me, thunder cracking and booming. As I climbed the swaying ladder to the deck, the ship pitched and rolled like a wounded animal. When I opened the hatch and clambered out, rain flew at me like arrows, so I could scarcely see a thing. Thunder seemed to make the entire sky shake as Petrel's wing heaved and rolled in the storm's fierce grip. I have turned my back on everything, for Hakatri's sake, was all I could think. And now he would send me away to protect me, as if I were a child, as if I had not long ago given my life over to him. I clung to the rail as I looked around for the captain, but the few sailors I could see were all desperately at work, struggling with ropes, trying to stay upright as great surges of water rushed from one side of the deck to the other. I was so battered by the thunder and the driving rain and my anguish that I did not even stop to think about my own safety. I leaned into the fierce wind of the storm and waded across the deck, still looking for Iato, still, even in this mad moment, trying to do my master's bidding. One of the Zidaya sailors had noticed me. As lightning split the sky, I saw his eyes widen. He was roped to the mast to keep from being washed overboard. "What are you doing up here, changeling fool?" he cried, his voice nearly swallowed by the howling wind. "Get below decks!" "Where is the captain?" I shouted, but the shrieking gale obliterated my words. I gripped the rail and took in breath to try again, but at that moment Petrel's wing crested a wave, and suddenly the bow tipped down. For a moment I felt my feet rise off the deck. Then we hit the bottom of the trough, and a massive wave leaped out of the darkness. I saw only its edge, white with foam, as it struck me and set me spinning. A moment later I was struck again. Everything was cold and black then, and my mouth was full of salt water. At first I thought I had only swallowed too much of a wave crashing over us, but the ship's wildly swinging lanterns were suddenly above me, and swells were pounding me, one after another. I had been swept from the deck into the sea. I tried to call out, but a wave swept over me and left me spluttering. Even as I managed to spit the salty water from my mouth and take a breath, another, even larger wave thundered down on top of me, and I went spinning down into the cold darkness, limbs thrashing slowly, helplessly, against the ocean's powerful grip. My first thought as the sea closed over me was a strange one. I am free. The larger part of me flailed in utter terror, fighting to reach the surface again, as the air began to burn in my lungs, but I had been tossed and turned until I had no notion of which way might be up, and the heavy blackness of the stormy ocean crushed me from all sides. I am drowned, I thought. Then a moment later, as the darkness around me passed into me as well, and life began to sputter out, I thought again, with sorrow, but also relief, I am free. When the blackness at last rolled away, I was astounded to find myself alive and floating in a wind-whipped nighttime sea, clutching a broken yardarm that must have been torn free by the storm. I could see no lights from Petrel's wing, and storm clouds had effaced the stars. In truth, I was not entirely certain that I lived, but until it was proved otherwise to me, I determined to stay afloat. I bobbed on the gradually calming ocean for the rest of the night. I think I went mad after a while, because I thought that my master came to me and said, "I am sorry I never called you by your true name, Kes. You always treated me well, Lord Hakatri. I did not see you when I should have. I did not hear you when I should have been listening. The terrible singing in my blood blinded and deafened me. Forgive me if you can." "I will never leave you," I told him. But of course I had left him already. I was talking only to myself. As the hours of darkness crept past, I slipped in and out of a sort of dreamy wakefulness. After the storm had spent its ire, the movement of the waves felt almost soothing. When the sun rose again, it first turned the swells pink along the eastern horizon. As it climbed higher, I could see myself at the center of an endless desert of water, little dunes of green topped with white foam stretching as far as I could see. Much of the ocean's surface was covered with a thin cloak of mist, and I saw no sign of either the ship I had lost or of land. A part of me thought it might be better to simply let go of the broken yardarm and thus of life, to slide into the depths and take a deep drink. But I was not yet ready to die. My mother's words again came back to me. "Some day, at a moment you most need it, you will feel the garden inside you. You will feel the heartbeat of the dreaming sea." And as I hung between the sky and the deeps, floating like an unhomed spirit, I began to understand what she meant. Time passed, but it also stood still. The waves splashed me, but were they different waves each time? Or was the same wave slapping at me over and over? Why had I thought I was saved when I was drowning? Saved from choosing my master's orders over my own loyalty to him? Or simply saved from the confusion and disappointment of being alive? I could not answer these riddles, and I still cannot to this day, but my mother's long-ago words soothed me. There was something in me that was more than my thoughts, my breath, my beating heart. That was all I knew, but during that timeless time it seemed to be enough. It was Tanukadaya fishermen, my own people, but of the Niski folk, who found me bobbing among the waves like an empty but sealed jar. And, like an empty jar, when they pulled me onto their boat, I could not tell them who I was or how I had come there, and only said, "I feel the heartbeat," over and over. I know this because they told me so after they had taken me back to land and nursed me back to health in their small seaside village. I remember nothing of the moment of my rescue except the feeling of hands pulling me out of the water. A rebirth. No, I can remember one more thing. I mourned the sea when it no longer surrounded me. Here is where the story of my master ends, because I have no more to tell of him, or little in any case, and the rest of my own story will be of little interest to those who study great matters. After my rescue from the waves, I spent a good while among those Niski folk of the western coast, staying with them through all the season of withering. Petrel's wing did not return for me. My master and Iato must have believed me swept into the sea and drowned. While I stayed with the fisher folk, I helped them on their fishing boats, learning a little of their hard lives and their old stories. But when the season of renewal came, I felt the urge to move on. Fate had given me my freedom now, I had to decide what I would do with it. I could have returned to Azua, but although I greatly admired and respected my master's family, it was Hakatri who had chosen me and lifted me up, and without him I knew my life there could never be the same. I would be permitted to live among them, I knew, and even treated kindly, but it would be the sort of forbearance shown to an old horse who has long passed his useful days. Instead, I decided I would go to Raven's Perch. I still had the letter I had meant to send on the day we left. The ocean's waters had made it unreadable, but I conceived a desire to deliver it in person to those for whom it had been intended. And that is what I did. Years have passed since the sea almost swallowed me, but I have never regretted seeking out my new life, and I write these words from my chamber in the castle atop the beacon, the smells of heather and hawthorn wafting to my window from the green mountainside. 2 floors below me, my wife and Lady Ona are watching the baby learn to crawl. But no matter how different my current life is from my old, and no matter how long I live, my master Hakatri will never be far from my heart. He still lives. This I know and will always know so long as it is true, because at times I still share his dreams. Hakatri's visions can be painful, frightening, and difficult to bear, but I hope by sharing them I might take a small share of his pain on myself. I will never know if that is true, of course, but I can hope. He was good to me, and even if I were to live as long as one of the highest Zidaya, I still could never forget the glad sight of Hakatri and his brother Iniluki as they rode side by side in days that are now gone, swift as a storm, so fair and full of laughter, the brothers of the wind. I wish my one-time master only happiness and an end to his suffering, that he might someday find his way back home, as, in my own way, I have done. Despite the unknowable distance between us, both the distance between then and now, and the distance between dream and waking, it seems I will remain bound to Lord Hakatri until his death, or my own, finally cuts our ties. I am content with that. And that was the end. And with that, I am going to stretch my back and prepare to sign off. So, I hope you enjoyed that. I thought it would be better than what happened last time, which is I think when I had to take some time off, I left everybody hanging with the last part of a story unread. So I wanted to finish it tonight. And we only ran about 20 minutes over, so I hope that's okay. Anyway, thank you very much for joining me. As always, a great pleasure to spend time with you. As I've said several times, I will be gone, so I won't be reading the next 3 weekends at least. I don't know what's going to happen after that, but I certainly will not be able to the next 3 weekends. So I hope that all of you will find cool things to do and take good care of yourselves and take good care of the people that you care about and the people around you. And I will see you in one way or another when I get back from my trip. And yeah, that's about it. So have a great next few weeks. Peace. Be well. Bye. Until we meet again.